Howdy everyone and welcome back. So if you saw in one of my previous videos, I showed you how you could grow oyster mushrooms at home on nothing more than a log. If you haven't seen that video, be sure to go check that out. In this video, I want to show you a different method that you can grow mushrooms at home with that's very easy and it uses nothing more than hay and a simple bucket. So come on, let's go check it out. Just like in my previous video, we're going to try to grow oyster mushrooms using this method. And the reason why I like to choose oyster mushrooms are they grow in a wide variety of materials, they are a lot more forgiving than some other species of mushroom, and they're absolutely delicious. So all those characteristics combined make these really great mushrooms for the beginner to try to grow. And there's other species of mushrooms you can get. There are shiitake mushrooms, there is lion's mane mushrooms. There's quite a few and many of them that most people have never heard of, but they're all good in their own way. Unlike in my previous video, we're not going to use the mushroom plugs this time. Instead, we're going to use the sawdust spawn. And all this is hardwood sawdust that has been colonized by the oyster mushroom spores. And I'm going to leave a link down in the description of where I purchased this at. And on their site, they have a lot of other varieties of mushrooms. So if you try this and like it, feel free to venture out and try other species. It's just going to take a little bit different management to grow each one of them. They like different things. So now that we've got this, the next thing we're going to do is look at what we need to grow these mushrooms. So one of the first things you want to do before you get started is choose your container. If you're using a porous material to grow your mushrooms in, you can use a large container, something like a laundry basket or in my case a bucket, and it'll do just fine. If you're using a dense material like sawdust or coffee grounds, you're going to want to use you're going to want to break this up into smaller containers with a minimum size of 1 gallon. And that's just so you make sure that you have good airflow going through your mushroom spores when you plant them. So if you choose to use a large container, you're going to want to make sure it has good airflow like I mentioned before. And the way you do that is you're actually going to drill holes in it if it doesn't have holes in it already. Like in my case, I have this bucket here, has no holes in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch holes all along the side and on the bottom of the bucket. That's going to allow for good airflow, and those holes are actually going to be where our mushrooms are going to grow from. Oyster mushrooms in particular like to grow out of the sides of things, it seems. So by having these holes in the side, the mushrooms are going to come out and you're actually going to see them grow out of the side of the bucket. So the next thing you're going to get before you get started is the material to grow your mushrooms in. In the case of oyster mushrooms, you can use things like wheat straw, hardwood sawdust. I've even seen some things about coffee grounds. In my case, I'm actually going to be using hay because we raise our own, and this is going to be the easiest thing for me to source, and it's going to allow good airflow in the bucket once I get everything set up. And so do some research online for acceptable materials for the kinds of mushrooms you want to grow, and then look around for what is going to be the easiest for you to access. One thing I can't stress enough during this whole process is cleanliness. You don't want to accidentally introduce molds and mildews into your growing material while you're trying to grow your mushrooms. And that's just doing things like making sure whatever container you use is as clean as possible. And in my case, I just went out and bought a brand new bucket because in my house, there is no such thing as a clean bucket. You're also going to want to make sure that the material used to grow your mushrooms in, as well as anything that's going to come in contact with, is as sterilized to the best of your abilities. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to thoroughly sterilize your material, in this case my hay, to make sure we kill any molds or fungus spores or anything that might be living in that hay before we introduce our mushroom spores. And then I'm going to show you how to get your whole mushroom bucket set up. So let's go check that out. So now what we're doing is we're going to go to my Uncle Randall's house because he has the equipment we need to thoroughly sterilize our hay to make sure there's not going to be any molds or any other fungus that's going to grow in our bucket while we're growing our mushrooms. It's always a super fun time to go out to his house where me and him are always working on some kind of project. So let's go see what he's up to and let's get our mushroom bucket started and on its way. All right, so this is my Uncle Randy. We've just been sitting here getting ready, getting everything all put together, and I'll get back with y'all when we get started. Okay, so I got Randall helping me out here. We're gonna put this hay in a pillowcase. What that's gonna do is that's gonna help us keep all of our hay together when we put it in our hot water to soak and sterilize it. Now we're gonna soak our hay in 170-degree water for about an hour, and that's gonna help sterilize it from any mold or fungus spores in there that we don't want. You're going to want to put a brick or something on this because you want this to be completely submerged for that time period. Okay, now that you've got it submerged, you just want to let it sit for an hour at 170, and I'll show you the next step after this. Alright, so we got the hay out now, and what you're going to want to do is spread it out on a clean table. You're going to want to disinfect it somehow, either with disinfecting wipes or alcohol or something along that lines, just to keep a really clean table. You want to make sure you're not going to infect it with any spores from any molds or other fungus. So the next step, like I said, we just want to spread this out and let it get to room temperature before you put your mushrooms in. You don't want to cook them. So now that the hay is cooled off, it's a little hot still in the center, but this on the edge is cooled off. We're going to take layers of that, put it in the bucket first, then we're going to layer some of our mushroom spores and just keep doing that till the bucket's filled. So you'll take like a layer of your hay here and put that down, make a layer in the bottom. And then we're going to take some of our mushroom spores. We're going to sprinkle this around in here. And then we're going to make another layer and just keep going. So once we get this filled, you're going to want to end it with a layer of your mushroom spores. And that's what's going to help keep anything that gets on top from really penetrating in. So end it with a layer of your mushroom spores when you layer this. And then all you got to do after that is put your lid on. And then I'll show you the next step. So what did you think about all this?
I think it's great. I'm ready for some mushrooms.
All right, well, I'll let you know when they're ready.
All right.
Okay guys, so we got the hay all sterilized, we got the mushroom spores all put inside. So now the next step is the incubation period. And when I get home, I'll show you what you do during that time period. Okay, so what you want to do next is you want to provide optimal conditions for this mushroom mycelium to colonize the material that we gave it. And this stage is what's called incubation. The way we're going to do this is we want to provide high humidity conditions and a dark location that stays between 65 to 85 degrees. The way we're going to do that is we're going to actually use a black trash bag, and we want to use something to keep the bag away from the sides of the bucket because we want good airflow as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this up here like this, and we're going to pull the bag up around the bucket. And this bag is going to provide good humid location for this to grow. And like I said, Airflow is important in all this. You don't want to completely seal the bag. What we're going to do is we're going to tie this up, and we're going to leave about a golf ball size pocket for air to exchange here. And this board, like I said, it's going to keep it away from the sides of the bucket so that way it can breathe. And all we're going to do now is we're going to take this and we're going to put it in a middle closet for a good dark location that's going to stay within the optimal temperature range. So let's go do that. Okay, so I have a spare closet in my house that's a good dark location, and it's right at the right temperature. It's right at 70 degrees. And we're going to leave these in here for 2 to 2.5 weeks during the incubation period. And we're going to periodically check on them for signs of growth, see how they're doing, and signs that mushrooms are starting to develop. And once that happens, we're going to take those out of here. We're going to go on to the next step, which is fruiting our mushrooms. There you have it, guys. That's all it takes to get your very own mushroom farm set up at home. Here in a week or two, I'm going to upload a video to show you how our mushroom buckets are progressing. And when mushrooms start to form, I'm going to make a video to show you how you can maximize mushroom production from your mushroom containers. I got all the info that I used in this video from 100th Monkey Mushrooms. They have really awesome videos on how you can grow your very own mushrooms at home. So be sure to go check them out. I'm going to leave a link to their videos down in the description, and I'll also leave them at the end of this video. So if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you have any more questions for me on how I got my mushroom bucket set up, or if you have any topics you'd like me to cover in future videos, be sure to leave those down in the comments. And as always, if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you can be there for when all the new videos come out, as well as these update videos I mentioned. So as always, until next time, I hope you'll join me right here on The More You Grow.